Okay, for the purpose of this study, a biographical research on the life of Roy Lewis, the Mystic Prowler, this is to inform you that I'm going to be asking you questions or ask you for narrations on his life. And this will be used as part of the research, as part of the data collection for analysis on the research on his life. And for this purpose, for ethical consideration, could you please state your name, your full name?
My name is Hazel-Ann Patricia Smith Baptist.
Do you understand the information I just outlined, what it's going to be used for and what it is about?
Yes, I do understand.
Could you state your relationship to Roy Lewis, the Mystic Prowler?
Roy Lewis was my stepfather. He came into my life when I was about 6 years old. He he met my mother in church after he left the Calypso world, and he came to church. He met my mother in church. I was about 6 years old when that happened. So that was my first encounter with him. After courting for about 6 months or so, they got married, and there is where I begin my life with the man called Roy Lewis.
When he came into your life, as you said, do you remember the first time you actually saw him, that exact moment? Anything you can recall from the first time you saw him or heard of him?
From what I could remember, I remember the first time I saw him is me and my mom used to live in in El Socorro, on the main road in El Socorro, and he came um to see her, and that was the first night I saw him. And when I saw him, I was like, "Who is this man?" Because my mother wasn't really a person who had no male friends and things, so it was strange that all of a sudden I was seeing this man. And then my aunt told me that this he was interested in my mother, and I didn't want to accept that because I was my mother's spoiled child at the time. Anywhere she go, I was up under her. We used to sleep together, I up under her, and in my little mind, I see this man come to take my mother away from me. So it was like, you know, but he came in, he said goodnight, he talked to me, and I was like, no,
It
I
was
don't
a
want
no for you.
you.
Did anyone, because at that time in 1973, who he was the Mighty Prowler, and he had already three coveted titles under his belt, which is the Buy Local King. Do you remember if you or your mother was aware of who he was in the Calypso world?
No, we were not. We were not aware at that time of who he was in the Calypso world.
You have any idea of to why that would be so?
Because you see, when he left the Calypso world and he came into Christianity, he left all that behind.
So he didn't come into
So he
his
did not
personal life
come,
as the Mighty Prowler.
no, he did not come as the Mighty Prowler. He came as Roy Lewis. Now, how we got knowledge of that is at time in church we had what they call testimonies, where you go back into your life and you give a testimony of what you used to do before you become a Christian. And that is when we knew about him as the Mighty Prowler.
That is when he made that confession.
Yes,
Okay.
that is when we know him as the about him as the Mighty Prowler.
So
But
if
before that, we just knew him as
mhm.
Roy Lewis.
Did it change the tone of the household after, like,
No, 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 no,
okay, okay.
no, it did not.
And how would you describe his personality in those days? Like, what is a typical?
Well, in those days, to me, he was always kind and a caring person, a caring because he picked up my mother having two children.
Mhm.
And if somebody didn't tell you that he was not my father, you would not have known.
Okay.
His treatment of me was not like, he's not my child.
Okay.
It was always kind and loving and always responsible, protective, all the things that you could have found in a father. He was that to me as a child growing up. So I knew him as, the a father figure, as provider. Anything that I wanted, he would have do his best to provide for the family as a whole. Even after my mom had children for him, it wasn't like these children are no mine and you's not my child. No, it was always the whole unit together that nobody could have tell that
Mhm.
I was not his child.
How many kids in total they had?
Well, my mom had five.
How many kids did he have?
Well, he had two kids before he met my mom, and then he had five with her, and then she had two. So when they got married was more like was four, they started off with four. Although mine his two kids didn't used to stay with us, but was her two kids, and then he had they had five together. So the whole family was
It's a
like
merging of,
was was
yeah,
about nine children, but was really seven of us who grew up together
with him.
with him.
Okay. Um, what about work? What did he do for work?
Oh well, he was first when he and mom got married, he was a messenger at the Chase Manhattan Bank. That was the bank on Broadway and Independence Square, where KFC is now. There was the Chase Manhattan Bank, and he worked there as a messenger
So this time, no calypso.
until no until the bank went away, and then he went to work with the First Citizen Bank.
Oh, that's when they
That
went.
time they merged all the
It was
three banks
National
together
Banks or
and
something.
came and it became First Citizen, and he went to work with the First Citizens Bank.
You
In
remember
those
what year was that?
mm, what year was that boy?
Remember how old were you maybe by that?
That, I think that was about 79,
79.
somewhere around there, because we had moved out of Mexico and we were living in Orangefield Road in Carpichaima when the Chase Manhattan Bank closed down. And then he started to work with First Citizen
During the
between
period,
79, 80, somewhere, right, somewhere around there.
how would you describe him as a husband? Anything in particular you remember? Like, you
Well,
know,
as a husband, I would say he was responsible. Um, well, in a typical marriage from a child looking in, he and mom will have like falling outs because of different, but it was not like if they had a fallout that it was going to last for days or they had the thing, they had the falling out, but within a day or so that would be mended and they would be back
so
together
it was
again.
functional. It wasn't
Just
really, he
functional,
wasn't
yes.
someone you say would bring like a toxic environment.
No, no, no.
What
It
about the
was functional.
humorous side of him? Did he used to see
Yeah,
that a lot?
well, the house was humor, was everything was a joke, you know. We had a lot. The spirit was. was not a heaviness. It was always a freedom, a freedom to express. And he always major on reading. Reading was his biggest thing. He had a whole library of books. And I, as a child, learned to read when we started to live together with him because anywhere he go, he had his library of books, and he would encourage us to take a book and read. All my first encounters of reading stories about the Queen and all like that was book. He had a book named Her Majesty, and that, to me, that was my first encounter with reading about the Queen, and that was his thing. His first thing was reading. You have to, if you're living in Roy Lewis house, you have to love to read because he would encourage you in reading. You have to read. He loved to read, always in a book. You see him, he always reading a book,
I like that.
always.
And what about the philosophical side? Anything you remember, like?
Well, at that time, he was more or less pure. He wasn't mystical yet,
Okay.
so was more spiritually based solely on the Bible and
Hmm.
the Bible teachings and thing. And he was ardent for church.
He was really interested in
You,
the church life.
you will not get between Roy Lewis and his church.
Tell me more about that just now.